Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now, if the throat, because we're talking of the articulation of the Qur'an, if it represents depth, then we go to the next part over here, the tongue. What does the tongue represent? The tongue, you can say it represents control, because most of the letters of the Qur'an, most of the letters of revelation, they originate from the tongue. And again, it's not random and it's not by accident, but by the divine wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the tongue. That's why they call it the word lisan, because it is the central design. Everything has to be centralized. Now, I want you now to focus and observe the tongue as the control center, because in the Quranic letters, the Quran, the tongue produces the widest range of the Quranic sounds which we hear. It can either be the hard sounds, the soft sounds, the flowing sounds, the stopping sounds, even the connecting sounds. Why? Because remember, the central command, and we're talking about articulation, communication, so that someone can hear, so that we'll understand that communication requires diversity of intensity to the listener, because you're communicating so that someone can listen. And for the case, the Quran, its primary aim is to be listened to. That's how it was received by the earlier recipients. Now, the Quran is known as guidance. And when we hear the guidance, we need to feel the precision. And the precision, it requires variation, different tones. Because let's face it, if all sounds were like, as I told you, they originated from deep in the throat here, language will like we'll just say it collapses to uniformity. But if all sounds were light, and again it means that the language itself will lose weight and it will lose depth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the wisdom placed the largest number of letters in the most flexible organ, and that's the tongue. Because the tongue itself is the instrument of nuance. Here, it is the region of depth. So, I want you to now figure it out. When we are learning how to recite the letters of the Quran, I want you to think of the tongue as the control hub. Okay? A control hub in terms of it shaping meaning, in terms of the tongue as we recite the Quran, it refines expression. The tongue functionality as we recite the Quran, that it creates distinction between meanings which are sort of near. And that's why the majority of the Quranic articulation, they reside here in the tongue. Not by chance, but by design from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His perfect wisdom. So inshallah ta'ala, the next episode, we are now going to move forward in the system. Now from control, now to exposure. From internal articulation to visible speech. And if you know the part of the vessel of communication which I'm talking about, if you talk about the most visible part or the most visible organs of speech, that is the lips, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.